can you support those rebels? In England, slavery is dying. Here it's thriving.
I believe America's struggle is like my own. The colonists consider themselves enslaved to a master they did not choose. And that's a fight. If it comes to fighting, I will not duck.
Even if you don't like the laws, you can't just ignore them. That will lead to chaos.
But what if the law is unjust?
I'm so confused. These Americans speak of liberty and freedom for all, but deny it to those with skin different from their own.
So why do you carry that flag?
Because this is my heritage. My family fought to save their farm under this flag.
Who was working that farm?
My family was.
Who was working the farm?
They were poor. Do you know how much a slave cost back then?
Hello, welcome, and happy Black History Month, a time we dedicate to remembering and celebrating a pivotal group of people who helped build this country, contributing significantly to the culture and laws of the United States, even building the White House where such laws have been signed. Twice, once when the White House was created and another time after Canada and the British burnt it down to the ground during the War of 1812. That's a blemish America doesn't like to remember. An Irishman, James Holden,
These nuts.
supervised and managed the construction of the White House, using the manpower of slave labor to not only create the home, but also to build his own prestige and notoriety. Look at that! Someone creating a career off the hard work of others. There's nothing quite as American as that. The influence of African American labor isn't narrowed to just national monuments, but Black culture and work have also had a profound effect on the arts, entertainment, and technology in our world. Speaking primarily about the arts, in particular, music. Whole ass music genres have literally been birthed out of Black lifestyles and circumstances, such as the blues, rock and roll, jazz, and the later creation of hip hop. Genres that surpass music themselves and became iconic for the impact they had on the world around them. Jazz was the perfect music to settle alongside the chaos of the 1920s, with swing dancing, mild liberalism, speakeasies, and the rise of organized crime. Jazz was also one of the first instances of integration. Jazz bands would perform in secret speakeasy locations where the races mixed, mostly without the fear of racially based attack. Hip-hop is one of the most popular forms of music today, and it even has close ties to the Negro spirituals of the antebellum South, where slaves would sing songs to make the work go by faster, pray for a better life through music, and ask for endurance through this tribulation through call and response, all while enduring the wickedness of Southern slavery.
Welcome to Freedom Land, you lazy bastards. This here is your orientation.
Ruckus, are you trying to tell us that we're supposed to act like slaves and be cool with it? Really?
Hip-hop in some instances recounts the current tribulations and struggles of Black culture in the inner city, and the still ever-prevalent challenge of being Black in America, all while using the bombastic beats and samples from earlier Black culture. Hip-hop in itself is an homage to Black culture. The retelling of somber, sometimes witty Black stories similar to the blues, the prayerful requests for a better life for Black people similar to the Negro spirituals, the literal use of samples of older Black media, particularly that of the late 20th century R&B, and the focus on drums and percussion is the basis of music originating from Africa. Unfortunately, for every one of these genres of music and cultural contributions, there have been individuals outside of Black spaces that have taken advantage of the systemic pressures on Black communities to retrieve as much monetary compensation as possible. Whether it's the music industry and the malicious loans that disguise themselves as record deals to entice inner city youth who have never seen money like that before, or white jazz bands stealing the style of Black and brown people to use in more luxurious places of business that Black people weren't even allowed in. Black men being incarcerated on a level higher than any other racial group in America. However, the music industry incentivizes tracks that prioritize murder, drugs, and sex, cause it sells the best. And what sells even better than a living rapper talking about those things is a dead one. Or the crack epidemic that crippled Black communities in the inner cities and made it easier for organized crime to surge, courtesy of poor executive leadership and handling, leading to many Black people, guilty or not, ending up in the prison industrial complex, which benefits greatly from free prison labor, the only slavery still legal in the United States. Or the literal slave trade that ripped away heritage from nearly all Black people in the states. A decision made by the white ruling class at the time that saw no problem stripping their history away, since they saw the colored person as property, not a person whose lineage was worth retaining. So, in a way, the country that many black people have come to love because it is their home, in a place that is ordained as the home of the free and the home of the brave.
And the home of the brave
is not that at all, depending on the color of your skin.
What stands out to me is just watching the Republican convention, and they're spewing this fear, right? Like, all you hear is Donald Trump and all of them talking about fear. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. We're the ones that we're denied to live in certain communities. We've been hung, we've been shot, and all you do is keep hearing about fear. It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad.
And legality has for the greater part of the nation's history supported the segregation and degradation of the black race. With rulings like Plessy v. Ferguson, which upheld a Louisiana state law that allowed for equal but separate accommodations for the white and colored races. The Dred Scott case, which upheld slavery in United States territories, denied the legality of black citizenship in America, and declared the Missouri Compromise to be unconstitutional. A compromise that had placed restrictions on slavery in certain U.S. territories. Black codes, which restricted black people's right to own property, conduct business, buy and lease land, and move freely through public spaces. A central element of the black codes were vagrancy laws. States criminalized men who were out of work or who were not working at a job whites recognized. The absence of civil rights till black and brown people had to die in protest to the point of violence to receive them. The war on crime and poverty, that both failed to tackle the real problem plaguing urban communities and destabilized the home by inducting many black fathers into the prison industrial complex. Gentrification, which slowly moves lower income individuals, often people of color, out of neighborhoods they've lived in all their lives and refurbishes those communities with higher earning members and higher quality infrastructure and buildings. Police brutality, which has plagued the black community since the enforcers were made to recapture runaway slaves as if they were property. Housing laws that literally stop black people from owning certain homes, or incentivize individuals who did not want to give housing to black people due to their own personal preference. Shout out to Donald Trump.
He uses the N-word all the time. That's a no-no. You're not supposed to do that. He uses it on a daily basis.
The creation of the suburbs as the last great getaway from Negroes. Jim Crow laws that literally segregated people based on the color of their skin. Normal places like public swimming pools, public bathrooms, public schools, public transportation, restaurants. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Yeah, there's quite a history of this. And it all stems from the system founded in 1776. Well, 1787, when the Constitution was signed and they realized the Articles of Confederation weren't gonna cut it. And that leads us to our animated program, Liberty Kids. Roll that intro. Based on an idea from Kevin O'Donnell and developed for television by Robbie London, Mike Meliani, Andy Hayward, and the very same Kevin O'Donnell who thought it up. Initially, it was titled under the name of Poor Richard's Almanac, the title of a yearly almanac published by Ben Franklin in the 1700s. Liberty Kids is an animated series that retells the story of the USA's origin, throwing the fictional Liberty Kids into pivotal historic American events that shaped the present day and the literal shape of this country. Events including the Boston Tea Party, the signing of the Constitution, crossing the Delaware, the shot heard around the world, and a bunch of other levels from Assassin's Creed 3.
Don't you the nigga that be on the money?
What in the hell is you talking about, nigga?
The nigga on the $100 bill?
Benjamin Franklin don't know what the hell you talking about, nigga. All Benjamin Franklin do in his spare time is speak in third person, use kites to conduct electricity experiments, invent bifocals, stoves, a penny earned is a penny saved, nigga, what?
The series tries to focus on the fight against the British for the freedom of the 13 colonies, but more important than the actual conflict are the numerous perspectives on it. After all, it was a loud minority of colonists who were genuinely in favor of full separation from Britain, especially earlier on. It was a radical idea, and most people just wanted to stay with the safe option. Liberty Kids reminds the audience that history is nuanced, and not everyone feels the same way about world-changing conflicts or even notices they're in the throes of world-changing events. And there are others who chase after change and chase after events that will alter history moving forward. And that ambition is a quality seen in most of the main characters. There's James Hiller, a 14-year-old orphan taken in by Ben Franklin.
A penny earned is a penny saved, nigga, what?
After his parents died in a fire caused by Ben's lightning rod invention. Yikes.
Our house was struck and burst into flames. It burned to the ground. I was lucky. A neighbor pulled me out in the nick of time.
James is a junior journalist, chasing the story of the revolution and always looking for a chance to show his fervor for the cause. Henri is another boy taken in by Ben Franklin.
The heart of a fool is in his mouth, but the mouth of a wise man is in his heart.
An 8-year-old French orphan who lost his parents on the ship he sailed in to get here. The plague swept over the ship, killing half of the crew and passengers, including his ma and pa. He was taken in as a slave or an indentured servant to pay off the debt his parents had accumulated getting the trip in the first place. Yikes. While docked in Philly, Henri was saved by James and Moses. The two stored the young man in a crate that used to contain printing press parts and sneakily escorted Henri off the boat without the captain ever figuring anything out. Moses, this helpful Chad, was a former slave, current Liberty Kid. Well, more of a Liberty grown man. Well, not really Liberty anything. He's still in 1700s America as a black man. Picked up on the shores of Africa, Moses was sent to Virginia as a slave alongside his brother. There, he learned the trade of smithing, and he managed to make enough coin to buy his freedom. This is so extremely rare a thing to do as a slave. It's not even funny. Also, I made it seem like it was a study abroad program, but Mans was being tortured and demeaned throughout his entire childhood. Well, after buying his freedom, Moses came up to Philly and teamed up with Franklin for a collab no one saw coming.
There, I learned to read and write and was offered a job by Dr. Franklin, a man who hates slavery as much as I.
Nigga, what?
All of these characters have been in the Americas for the majority of their lives, if not all their lives. They also have become well informed about the cause for freedom, being friends with this guy and all.
And today I declare my answer. I am not British. I am an American.
More treason.
Sarah Phillips, the one girl in the group, starts off the first episode by making her inaugural trip to the Americas via a ship carrying some pretty refreshing cargo.
Would you care to sit with me for a cup of English tea?
Her father is in the British Army and was an explorer, even participating in the 7 Years' War, which caused all this taxation that irritated the colonists.
Why you have to be mad?
Like the others, she's strong-willed and ambitious, but more open to new perspectives. Perhaps because these three are in a position of oppression, as opposed to Sarah, who had come from a more luxurious background. Coming from the homeland, Sarah finds her sympathies leaning more towards the British, and if not that, peace in the disruption of colonist aggression. After all, they're all English. They shouldn't be fighting one another.
Are you crazy? Do you want the British to catch us?
I am British. We're all British.
The series sees James and Sarah bantering back and forth about their different perspectives on the cause.
So you think it's okay to impose taxes on the colonies, even though the colonies don't have a vote in Parliament?
I think loyal subjects of the king should obey the laws of their country. And you can quote me on that.
James, the rough around the edges American boy, and Sarah, the elegant and proper English girl. A dynamic we all love to see. Their real disagreements stem from the dilemma of fighting against the British, and whether violence or civil disobedience is worth potential jail time, increased taxation, or worst of all, death. Another important aspect they discuss is, what's the line when an unjust law needs to be addressed by the people the law affects? And what is the right way to fight against the unjust nature of the legal system?
Even if you don't like the laws, you can't just ignore them. That will lead to chaos.
But what if the law is unjust?
Parliament would never pass an unjust law.
But they have. I interviewed the men tonight. The colonies must pay taxes to the king, but we have no voice in Parliament. Does that sound fair to you?
I don't know what to think. I only know Ben Franklin would hardly approve of what went on tonight.
Then you don't know Ben Franklin.
A penny earned is a penny saved, nigga, what?
Sarah isn't informed about why British colonists would want to fight against the crown and what would cause this relationship between the two landmasses to get so bad. James, on the other hand, struggles to see why anyone would support the crown, given the grievances of the revolutionaries like the whole no taxation without representation and the Boston Massacre. Yeah, amongst the list of events that occurred during the show, the massacre wasn't one that was visualized. In episode 1, we get to hear Samuel Adams, yeah, the guy on the beers. He's having a little conference in the pub getting people riled up about the taxes and the massacre.
And who can forget our brothers who lost their lives in the Boston Massacre?
So much so that the dudes leave here and towards the docks, where they commence Operation dressing up as
Mohawk Indians
and trash the tea. Why would they destroy private property and ruin commerce of big business that greatly benefits the crown? Almost like they were trying to get the attention of their oppressor by attacking their means of monetary gain. Where have you seen this before? They even disguise themselves poorly, something the show points out.
Mohawk with yellow hair?
Why the fuck you lying?
Because they were afraid of getting caught and getting punished severely by the Redcoats, cause this was illegal. While rewatching the show, I noticed how it prioritizes an important concept early on before delving into the fight for freedom. That is that freedom is a complicated word. It means something different for everyone, but for most of the time, it didn't include the slave class of black people, or any brown or ethnic people for that matter, or women, or people who didn't own land. They were not included in the we the people part of the Constitution. In terms of black people, they were property, and when black people weren't property, they were the savage or the uncivilized. In episode 1, we get subtle references to the absence of humanity that most whites assumed about black people. When Moses assures the group that he will not draw attention since most will assume he is a faceless servant.
But I'll just be another faceless servant.
When running away from the docks where the tea party just occurred, the gang finds themselves at the Wheatley house, owners of Phyllis Wheatley, the first black poet to ever be published, who is
a slave?
I'll let her tell you a little bit about her story.
When I was 8 years old, I was kidnapped in West Africa and taken on a slave ship to Boston. The Wheatleys paid for me in the auction and took me home. Mrs. Wheatley helped me learn to read. Not just English, but also Latin and Greek.
Please, go on.
Well, a few years ago, all of the reading gave me an urge to start writing poetry. And soon thereafter, my first book was published. It has gotten a rather good response in England, though very few copies have been sold in the colonies.
That's not surprising. Maybe you should have put pictures in it.
The Wheatleys have helped me greatly. They even sent me to London.
But I don't understand. You're still a slave.
Now, some of you are like, duh. Of course I know who Phyllis Wheatley is. Who doesn't know who Phyllis Wheatley is? You have to be an idiot not to know. And others are like, I've never heard of this person before. Well, I'm in Group B.
You're a moron.
I'd never heard of Phyllis Wheatley till this episode, which is also why I wanted to share it with all of you on the channel. It's after meeting someone so eloquent, wise, and confident that Sarah is conflicted about why slavery even exists, why Phyllis is content with slavery, and why do both Moses and Phyllis pursue the colonists' ambition to be free from British tyranny, when in America slavery is thriving, yet in England it is dying. Moses responds this way.
I believe America's struggle is like my own. The colonists consider themselves enslaved to a master they did not choose. And that's a fight. If it comes to fighting, I will not duck.
Right there, we got to see Sarah being ahead of her time and seeing the humanity of people who would normally be categorized as uncivilized beasts simply based on their appearances.
How can a woman like Phyllis Wheatley be somebody's property? It's outrageous. Am I the only one who sees this? Those men tonight throwing tea into the water, all that talk of freedom. What about freedom for Miss Wheatley?
Not everyone in the colonies believes in slavery, Sarah.
Talk is easy.
And freedom is priceless. I know. I was born free.
But it's complicated. That is the relationship with America for a black person. When constantly burdened by the systemic injustices embedded into the framework of the country, having this need to protect the place you call home and the positive ideals linked to this country, it's difficult to look past the hypocrisy of freedom in the American sense of the word.
Oh, the land of the free.
When it has not been so free for the people who have inhabited this land. One of the reasons that Phyllis Wheatley had such faith in the revolution was because of her faith in the faith of her masters in God. Being a part of the Southern Church, they believed that through more interaction with other Africans, whites would start to see the humanity that slavery and race-centered ideology had blinded them to.
The Wheatleys and I belong to the Old South Church. It is our hope that through meeting Africans, white people will realize how wrong slavery is.
Once again, that same challenge is met. To look past the hypocrisy of the Holy Book and how this text was used to both preach for an exodus and mass freedom of imprisoned innocent people, similar to the very book of the Bible, while also being a tool used by Southern preachers to enforce the barbarous nature of slavery.
What the Christian slaveholders, and I say Christian slaveholders with quotation marks around it, I think we all have to keep that in mind. What the Christian slaveholders did with their Bibles was to take Paul's descriptions of the New Testament world, slaves, obey your masters, which was descriptive of the state of life, and to take that as prescriptive. Therefore, masters may have slaves, and slaves must obey in all situations. So this was a type of literal interpretation, and they could claim that they were being faithful to Scripture, that they were interpreting Scripture literally. Now, of course, to do that, they had to ignore all of the minor prophets and everything that was said in the Old Testament about social justice. And so, of course, it was a very selective literalism, which we still see in Christianity today at times. So it was a principle of interpretation which was good, but the principle was distorted in order to support slavery. And those people who are not able to see their own desire for power, their own desire for domination, take these powerful principles and twist them in order to keep that power. And this is what we see in the slaveholders. They could not recognize that their interpretation of Scripture was tied to their own wealth, their own prosperity, their own desire to maintain power. They were so blinded by it.
It's clear that religion was a major part of Wheatley's poetic inspiration and helped her communicate with her audience. Well, the audience that could read and write, reaching more people in England than in the very colonies she worked in. Wheatley used passages like this.
"'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God, that there's a Savior too. Once I redemption neither sought nor knew. Some view our sable race with scornful eye, their color is a diabolic dye. Remember, Christians, Negroes, black as Cain, may be refined and join the angelic train."
Wheatley was looking to God as a common denominator, the thing that brought all races together, that through salvation everyone can be given redemption and find the light of anti-racist rhetoric. I personally don't think that saying everybody needs to be Christian in order to be seen as an equal is a super good thing. But I can't expect much from someone who had religion literally forced on her.
When I was 8 years old, I was kidnapped in West Africa.
Based on the poem, she even sees her homeland as a pagan and godless place. And once again, I can't disagree that much. When there are people kidnapping children off the shores to be mercilessly worked 18 hours a day with no pay, that sounds hella godless to me. In episode 2, the British begin to occupy Boston given the recent attack on commerce. This even leads to quartering, where a homeowner will have to let soldiers stay in their crib, and they gotta serve them. And the soldiers pay nothing for the service as well.
Hey, that's some bullshit.
This is another time Sarah starts to see where the colonists are coming from.
I can't believe King George would allow that.
It was Parliament's doing. They call it the Coercive Axe.
The intolerable axe would be more like it.
Can you imagine someone occupying your home with military forces, taking away your freedoms, your sense of comfort, your basic human rights, and your right to your own land? Yeah, me neither. We get a brief insight on how the soldiers sent here feel about the occupation starting.
If Boston's going to cause trouble, Boston's going to pay the piper.
Sounds oddly similar to the whole,
when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Well, Lauren, that quote came from Walter Headley, a former Miami police chief who was known for harsh policing in the black community. And then, as now, Headley's words became a lightning rod for trouble.
In 1968, peaceful demonstrators marched near the Republican National Convention on Miami Beach. But a few miles away in Miami, tensions ran much higher. Police wielding rifles shot and killed 3 men in Liberty City and Overtown to quell rioting and looting, carrying out orders of Police Chief Walter Headley, an old-school cop with a hardline approach.
All I'm saying is reconsider what side of history you're on.
Whose side are you on?
Later, we see the kids sneak off from the premises to print propaganda criticizing the intolerable acts. British soldiers find out, and later, the gang find themselves having to stealthily evade imprisonment for the illegal printing. They're trapped inside a print shop where the British soldiers interrogate them. The commanding soldier even makes Phyllis prove that she is a poet by forcing her to spit some bars real quick. He's like, black people can't write poetry, bro. You better prove it. You better show me. You better show me some stanzas.
Show them, Phyllis.
Yes, let's hear this poetry of yours.
Descend to earth, there place thy throne. To succor man's afflicted son, each human heart inspire. To act in bounties unconfined, enlarge the close contracted mind, and fill it with thy fire.
Right. So you're a poet.
After passing the vibe check, the commander turns to the only English citizen he thinks he can trust. The one with the thick accent and the most yellow teeth, Sarah. After finding out he worked for Sarah's father during the 7 Years' War, he reminds her that her allegiance is to the crown, and if she knows anything about the revolution, she needs to speak up. She has her first moment where she distinguishes whether she's sympathetic to the cause or if she's the British cuck she's been coming off as.
Your father would expect you to tell the truth to an officer in the service of his king.
You better not sell him out.
Spill it, girl. Well, I'm waiting, young lady.
Where are my manners? You must be half frozen riding in this cold weather. I'll fix a pot of tea on the Franklin stove.
Even she's beginning to get infected with revolutionary vigor. The series, at least the episodes I've had the time to watch, really captured the feelings at the time, you know, because I was there and all. But it does a good job of wrestling with the dynamics of freedom, the fear of fighting such a vastly stronger enemy, and the inner turmoil between the leaders and the very young collection of states. It brings these iconic historical characters to life in a way that makes them all feel like three-dimensional human beings, even those who wouldn't have been viewed as fully human at the time. Only about 3/5 or something. Or was it 40 acres and a mule? I don't remember. The show brings about a feeling of patriotism, even to the niggas who don't even like this country. And I think that most of that is due to the cranking theme song. Run it again.
I take my heart into battle, give that freedom battle rattle, get my independent sign, declare it on the dotted line. Let Philadelphia freedom ring and patriotic voices sing. Red, white, blue, never give up. You represent America.
Open and praying for a brighter day. I listen to my heart and I obey. How can I see it any other way? I'm looking at life through my own eyes.
But if it's not the theme song, it's these transitions. Damn, y'all, they smooth. Oh my god, they're smooth.
You're Sarah Phillips?
The series has also reminded me how much of the country was founded on illegal protest, attacking the means of monetary gain, and using words and actions to fight back against big oppressive systems such as the British Crown and Parliament. The separation wasn't exactly peaceful. That's the early history of America, making a big fuss when things don't go our way and starting our own thing, then killing a bunch of natives. Just to give them a few reservations, casinos, and a holiday dedicated to peace and good cooking. God, I love this country. America is founded on fighting back illegally for what you think is right. The Tea Party was a crime. The printing of revolutionary material was a crime. So many of the revolutionary tactics were against the law because legal actions wouldn't have gotten the point across. Which makes it so infuriating when we have presidents that use their executive power to attack peaceful protesters with militant force because citizens disagree with their shitty handling of national problems.
That's a no-no. You're not supposed to do that.
Protesting is almost as American as race-based slavery. A few history-adjacent YouTubers made this astute comment.
That both the radical, violent approach and the slow, steady institutional approach did the job, right? Like, I think it's, honestly, I think it's a matter of interpretation. I have my bias, which is, you know, down about 100 yards that way, but I don't know. I don't know, Carl.
What if
I can't answer that question.
What if it takes both? That's the thing, is what if one doesn't work without the other? Yeah. And when I say civil disobedience, I don't think that it necessarily, when I say massive civil disobedience, it doesn't have to include violence. There are other forms, and we've seen other massive civil disobedience that did not require that, or at least was not violent like this. I think it can be without violence, or with at least hopefully the most minimal amount. But the massive amounts of people, which is what John Brown kicked off, or other forms of massive amounts of people saying no more, is what ultimately forces the hand of the political end to do the right thing. This is a comment that came up on In Range years ago, and I love it. America will do the right thing after exhausting all other options. I feel like without something that causes the spark, you don't get the institution to do the right thing.
And this is very true for the American Revolution and other revolutions that have occurred within its borders, such as the Civil Rights Movement, which attempted to completely reinvent the law and make people of multiple different backgrounds, ethnicities, and ways of life equal under the law. What madmen. And of course, it was met with violence. The violence that helped spur America towards equal rights, given the discomfort of seeing the police sick dogs on teenagers. And even the dilemma of John Brown's rebellion, as discussed in this video, was a precursor to a much bigger conflict that luckily ended in the freedom of slaves. But just as I mentioned in the beginning, what is freedom? What does it mean to you? Who deserves it? Who doesn't deserve it? Where should the limits of freedom be? What should the limitations on freedom be? And who should decide who gets that? What are you willing to do to ensure your fellow human beings get the freedoms they deserve? Phyllis Wheatley used her gift for writing, though she was still oppressed, to encourage people like her. But more important than encouraging her people was gaining the admiration and respect of the white ruling class, so that they could better understand that she was human too. Voltaire, a French Enlightenment writer, philosopher, satirist, an historian, and a staunch critic of slavery and Christianity, he wrote to a correspondent that Phyllis Wheatley had proved blacks could write poetry.
What did you say, nigga?
As backhanded of a compliment that is, it was proof that her writing was enlightening the enlightened. Within a month of the book's publication and Phyllis's return to America from England, the Wheatleys freed her. This only happened because the colonists were apparently unwilling to support literature by an African. She and the Wheatleys turned in frustration to London for a publisher. Gotta love that hypocrisy. Phyllis broke barriers, allowing the next generation of black speakers in favor of abolition to further the cause. The same cause that was sidebarred in exchange for the fight for freedom from British tyranny. She used her rare and fortunate situation to speak out for justice and reconciliation. Well, it was fortunate in comparison to other people like her. By the time Frederick Douglass's writings were becoming accessible, Wheatley's rhymes and poetry weren't as frequently read as they used to be. Wheatley used her gifts to pave the way for the next generation of writers and activists to progress toward a brighter future for people of color. I hope you use your gifts to pave a future for others who lack the confidence to speak up, or others who feel empowered by your actions to also fight for justice and inclusivity. We have to work to understand each other more if we ever wish to live in a world with more harmony than discord. We have to work hard to see the humanity in others. And for those not under oppressive regimes, we need to learn to be more sympathetic to those who have been the victims of oppression. You have to notice that you come from a place of privilege, and only after acknowledging that can you ever wish to offer any real assistance to those in more oppressive conditions. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Tell me why you ain't digging or why you did. If you have any other cartoons you want me to watch, leave them in the comments. As you know, or as you maybe don't know, I've been Woody G. Be happy, be healthy, be kind to someone, and I'll see you later. Run it again!
Niggas be hating on me like a motherfucker, son. Feel me? And I don't even really been understanding why. Like George Washington just be trying to save the world. George Washington be trying to ride his horse. I just be trying to get this paper, you feel me? I just try to collect what's mine, you feel me?
I take my heart into battle, give that freedom battle rattle, get my independent sign, declare it on the dotted line. Let Philadelphia freedom ring and patriotic voices sing. Red, white, blue, never give up. You represent America.
Hoping and praying for a brighter day. I listen to my heart and I obey. How can I see it any other way? I'm looking at life through my own eyes.